So good afternoon and welcome. Almighty God, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Please guide our hearts and minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today to the advancement and true welfare of our people and of Australia. Amen. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past and present. The Armidale Regional Community pays tribute to their love of land, love of people and love of culture. We all share the beauty of this land, the richness of its soil and the uniqueness of its wildlife. Let us walk together in the footsteps of love and understanding. While valuing diversity, let us share the same hope for a better future. Now, a statement about live streaming. This meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recordings of the non-confidential parts of this meeting will be made available on the internet. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised by council to do so. Now, for those who are doing a have your say, all speakers are requested to ensure their comments are relevant to the particular agenda item. The chairperson may withdraw the privilege to speak where a speaker makes personal remarks or criticisms or uses abusive or inappropriate language. Speakers do not enjoy any special protection arising from comments made during council meetings and should therefore refrain from making any defamatory comments or personal defamatory statements against any individual. Anyone having to say, oh, well, there was a 5-minute period and I will give you a 1-minute warning. So thank you. Councillors, there's no apologies. I have one declaration of interest here. Are there any others? Nope. So have your say. We have one person registered for have your say, which is Elaine Barclay. Elaine, would you come up? There's a...
Mr. Mayor, could we know what that disclosure was, please?
It's from Councillor Deborah O'Brien, and it is a non-pecuniary, non-significant conflict because she's employed by Armidale Family Support Services. So, Elaine, do you mind coming up to the podium up there, please? There's a button there you press. It's not activate. Oh, you've done it. So, Elaine, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the motion for the Armidale Neighbourhood Centre. My name's Elaine Barclay, and I have been the president of the management committee for the past 5 years, about the same time that Robbie came to be the manager of the centre. And I'm also an associate professor in criminology at UNE, and my special area of research is crime in rural communities. Therefore, I'm really quite passionate about services like the ANC because they provide the support for people. So you might be aware that the New South Wales State Government is providing $3.8 billion for prison expansion across the state, but at the same time there's a policy that really encourages justice reinvestment. And that's a process whereby if you take money out of the prison budget and put it into welfare services that address the problems at the grassroots level, then you don't need as much money at the end. So that's why I support the Neighbourhood Centre. Now, Armidale does have a good range of services, we all know that, but how do you find them? How do people who are hungry know where to go? How do you find a woman who's traumatised by domestic violence with children? How does she know where to find that shelter in town? People know, some people know where it is, but mostly people know where the neighbourhood centre is. They know that people there will direct them to the services that they require. So we are appealing to Council to reinstate the funding that they used to provide to the neighbourhood centre, and that's about $20,000 we've asked for. And this will enable us to continue to offer the 24 hours of service to sustain community wellbeing. And the reason that we need this funding is that the need has escalated over the past 2 years. We are seeing increasing numbers of people coming to us wanting food, and they're in trouble with their power and their telephone bills. And this is not unique to Armidale. Most country towns, most city areas are experiencing the same problem. So Armidale is cold, and that's where the difference is here. There's homelessness in this town and you don't see it. And there are people that are sleeping under the bridge, there are kids sleeping in cars, or the young people are couch surfing. At any one time there's about 120 kids that are essentially homeless. I had one in my home for 2 years. He was left abandoned by his mother, and I took him in for 2 years. He paid rent, of course, but he's now happily married with 2 kids of his own. And this is about economic development. It's about supporting people in their hour of need and getting them back on their feet. So if we close, yes, FACS will probably move these services to some other provider, but we will lose the ANC, and that's 47 years this service has been operating in this town. And that gives people confidence to go in and know people are there that are going to help them. 49% of our people that come to see us are from the Aboriginal community because they trust us, and that's something we're quite proud of. The other services that we network with are really quite concerned that we will fold because we are the open door for their services. And if we close, we lose the most amazing group of women that I've ever worked with. They really are so committed to the service they operate, and they are working way beyond their paid hours. They have that strength and ability to work with people in distress, and it's not easy. We really like this idea of a hub that you'll hear about. It actually was our idea. People don't realise that, but 2 years ago we met with Mr. Tiley. We also met with FACS to discuss this whole concept of a hub where people would come to one central location and get all of the services that they can.
Elaine, just 1 minute.
1 minute, yeah. But the hub is not expected to get operational for another 2 years. So how do we manage over the next 2 years where we haven't got enough funds to meet the demand? And that's the problem. We strongly reject any assertion that we mismanage our finances. We're overseen by Forsyth. Both our accountant and our bookkeeper and our treasurer have accountancy degrees. And we have never had a complaint from FACS about the way that we operate our service. We fulfil all our KPIs, we meet all our compliance and our reporting requirements, and they sign off every year and refund us. So we're doing the right thing. So they're aware, and they have rejected our appeals for more funding. They argue that a receptionist position is a luxury, but it's an OH&S issue. You can't manage a whole group of people in a waiting room while one person is meeting with people, particularly with the sorts of people that come in a state of distress. We currently operate for the 12 hours now that FACTS funds us, but it doesn't meet the need that we're facing. People don't have crisis between the hours of 9 and 12, 4 days a week. A lot of our services that
Elaine,
pardon?
your time's up. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, moving on with business. We've got, in your papers, you've only got one mayoral minute, but there are two. So the first mayoral minute, which is the Danga Street Railway Bridge, and the recommendation is there. Can I have I'll move that from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gray. It's pretty straightforward. We've got a bridge that New Holland are likely to put a load limit on, and that's the major bridge over the railway line. It is part of a state road. It is also part of a B double route. And if John Holland, who are the managers of that bridge, put a weight limit on it, all the heavy traffic will have to go through the town. And the difficulty we have is that that's going to be a residential area, and roads there are not built for heavy transport. They're not designed to have cattle trucks with effluent potentially coming out of them, and there's a lot of other issues with it. So there's just a note, but we've written to Adam Marshall requesting support, and we've been in touch with John Holland to see what we can do about it. So anyone wish to raise any questions on this? Okay, I'll put that to vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Oh, thank you, Mr. Wilson. I forgot to confirmation of minutes. Item 6, I was jumping ahead. Minutes been all circulated. Can I have a mover and a seconder that those minutes have a true record of what happened at the last meeting? Councillor Martin, Councillor Murat. Any issues pertaining? Okay, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Carried. And mayoral minute number 2. This is an acknowledgement of the A.W. Edwards Building Award for Armidale Airport Terminal. Now, this was circulated to you basically a week ago from Mr. Mark. So you're up to date with that. But the recommendation is that Council recognise the achievements of A.W. Edwards, the building contractors responsible for the upgrade of the Armidale Regional Airport Terminal, who have been awarded a Masters Builders Association Excellence in Building Award, extensions, renovations and refurbishments, $5 to $10 million, 2018 for the new terminal. So I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Martin. Any discussion? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Passed. Councillors, with your indulgence, I wish to move that item 12.1, which is the Armidale Neighbourhood Centre Financial Sustainability and Remodelling, be moved for your consideration before item 8.2. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bailey. I'll speak to this. Item 12.2 provides substantial information on the progress of discussions between Armidale Neighbourhood Centre, one of their funding providers, and Armidale Regional Council. I believe this item will provide substantive information for your deliberation in item 8.2. So it's a procedural motion, so I'll just ask for votes. Those in favour?
Against the procedural motion, Mr. Mayor. First of all, you're referring to 8.1, not 8.2, and the other report you're referring to is 12.1, not 12.2. But given that, I had intended to include the recommendation in 12.1 as part F of my notice of motion. There's no disagreement about the need for recommendation under 12.1. It's the way forward. So I believe that you should consider the notice of motion, and I will incorporate the recommendation 12.1 as part F of the notice of motion.
Councillor Tiley, it is 12.1, and you're correct, it is item 8.1. I believe that people should debate 12.1 beforehand to get a full knowledge of it before they then debate yours.
That's your view, Mr. Mayor. You've now spoken twice. I'm not going to speak twice.
So I'm going to put the motion of that we bring the 12.1 to be discussed now, or be considered now. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. So we'll move to 12.1. Page 24. And 12.1 is that the council support the Armadale Neighbourhood Centre to investigate the possible option of a hub model and develop a sustainable business model for its client service delivery. Before I do put this for a move and second, I would ask our CEO to provide comments, please.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. Krista Smith, who is our Service Leader, Community and Customer Services, is available to give commentary on her report.
The purpose of this report is simply to raise awareness of the possible options to be explored, which will assist ANC to continue to provide the much needed services that they provide in our community. And attract additional services and to put in place a financially sustainable business model that will carry them forward into the future. The funding bodies, FACS, have confirmed that they would fully support transition into a hub model which would offer co-location to a number of services and that a number of complementary services. And the benefit of that, which that offers to the community, is a more user-friendly referral pathway to the most vulnerable members of our community and anyone accessing the services through the neighbourhood centre. Co-location will allow ANC to better service and provide the service that they already provide to more members of the community, because they'll be in the same building as the other service providers that their recipients most need. So I acknowledge everything that Elaine said and accept, you know, that this probably is something that you've raised initially, and we need to work side by side, ANC, and help them to move forward on this.
Krista, if you just mind waiting, are there any questions councillors have to Krista? Councillor Widders? Can you turn your mic off, please?
Just a couple of notes I wrote while Elaine was talking in her your say. So from what comes out of 12.1, one of the issues raised was that there would be a void for 2 years while the hub got up and running. So my understanding from what I've read is that the FACS will fill that void within the 2 years and that the service won't be lost, it'll just be moved.
I'm not sure that the service will be moved within the 2 years. My understanding is that it would stay in the location that it is. No, I think what Elaine was talking about and what I've learned through the discussions that we've had is if ANC as it is today were to decide that they didn't want to continue through this period, that we wouldn't lose those services to the community, that FACS would put it out to tender, I guess, and look for another service provider, which is what Elaine commented on as well. So it means that we won't lose the services to our community if ANC decide that they don't want to continue through the process that needs to happen.
Debating this or just asking questions?
This is purely question at the moment before we...
We're asking questions first, okay.
Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you, Krista. I would ask for a mover in a second, please. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Gray. Councillor Bailey? Councillor Gray? Timmy, how much time speaking again? If no one's spoken for it.
So,
You wish to speak, Councillor Gray?
speak for
Yes.
this. I'm not sure whether it, I think I would like to put an amendment to that motion in that the hub business model may well sound like, investigate the possibility to include the a feasibility that it's financially viable for that model to go ahead, bearing in mind that we still need to discuss 8.1 and what might result from that. I think that while it's good in theory to investigate other business models, we need to make sure that it is viable and sustainable for the long term for the benefit of the people within the community. So that's just adding part B to that. Is that...
Councillor Bailey, are you happy with that? Okay, anyone wish to speak for the motion? Okay, speak against the motion? Straightforward. I'll put that motion then. Those in favour? Those against? Sorry, Councillor Bryan, you against or you for? Good. Now going back to item 8.1, then there's a 5-part motion there, and there's a motion from Councillor Ian Tiley. I presume, Councillor Tiley, you wish to move?
You got it.
Councillor Tiley, Councillor O'Connor.
If I may, Mr Mayor, move the 5-part motion as printed and add on Part C, Jessica, the following words, that in the following years, where you see it there, comma, until a better arrangement is secured, until a better arrangement is secured, comma, and then you carry on. Okay. So
Okay, before we move, I move an amendment from the chair, and I move the following.
excuse me, Mr Mayor, we don't have a seconder for the motion.
Yes, we do.
Do we?
Councillor O'Connor.
Okay, thank you.
I move the following, that we make a new F, that Council directs the CEO to make immediate adjustments to the existing community services budget to give effect to B and C. So can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Gray. The reason I'm moving this is that
Mr Mayor?
you will in a minute, please, Mr. Tiley, Councillor Tiley. This is an amendment, so therefore we treat the amendment first.
No. Further, Mr Wilson.
Okay, I'll let you introduce the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'm delighted that 12.1 recommendation was adopted because I see that as a natural add-on to the motion as printed. I disagree with the amendment and I'll cover that shortly. The motion is self-explanatory and is strongly supported by the Neighbourhood Centre, as evidenced by Associate Professor Barclay's excellent presentation today. The passage of this motion will enable the ANC to recommence its exceptional support of disadvantaged local people to the level of until a few weeks ago, and until such time as a more permanent solution is secured in future. It will also have Council reinstate funding that it previously granted to ANC to contribute to the building of social capital, local community inclusion, resilience and well-being. ANC has most reputable accountancy and governance support. It's plain wrong, even mischievous, to suggest that this is about the organisation and governance and management aptitude or lack of fiscal management, when it is purely around the gradual withdrawal of council funding at the local level and the insufficient and inequitable funding at the state government level. If passed, this resolution will provide some surety and confidence for the ANC to continue its great work for those less fortunate, work that it has undertaken on a woefully inadequate budget, as we just heard, for 47 years. The motion was lodged on the 6th of August. At the Mayor's request on 13th August, I deferred putting this motion before Council, as he was endeavouring to engage with Adam Marshall MP on the issue and also to meet with the Minister for Community Services. This motion is now before Council, in part at least, in the absence of positive responses to date from those people. The Mayor and I suspect some colleagues have the view that Council should not be funding ANC. The notice of motion seeks to allocate $20,000 only in a Council total budget of approximately $93 million, a very small budget alteration indeed. Furthermore, our unaudited financial statements tell us that the net operating deficit for the financial year to 30th of June last was a deficit of $2.6 million, and after accounting for depreciation of $16.4 million. However, in the previous financial year, ANC achieved a net operating surplus of in excess of $16 million, a net positive situation of almost $13.7 million. It is an absolute furphy to suggest that Council does not have the money. Those who peddle that line show their lack of experience and understanding of ARC finances. To place blame on the ANC for not modifying their management, as the Mayor did by an email on the 28th of August, is effectively blaming this wonderful organisation for having insufficient funds, a lamentable situation indeed. Mid-year budgetary changes are regular features of Council's budget, and this is indeed a minor change which can readily be made at the next quarterly budget review. It doesn't require the amendment that the Mayor has foreshadowed. For example, take a few dollars out of very significant economic development coffers. I believe that the Mayor was in error in advising the ANC representatives at a meeting on 17th of August that Council did not have any funding available. That is rightly a decision for the Council to take today. I submit that if Council can contribute over $700,000 to the Semirez tourism project, we can allocate $20,000 to those most in need of support in our community. ANC Chairperson Associate Professor Barclay has informed me that to secure another provider would be unlikely to happen until sometime in 2020. What is to happen in the interim to the unfortunate folk who right now rely on the ANC for the very basic life essentials? What is to happen to the 49% of the neediest clients who happen to be Aboriginal? Council can today wash its hands of this issue. It can posture that a new regime of support may perhaps in time be provided elsewhere. It can adopt a conservative, not our problem stance, or hope that DOCS or some other entity picks up the pieces and wait to be judged by the electors for our heartlessness. Or Council can today demonstrate its genuine care and concern for those less fortunate in the local community. Council can show it does possess real leadership qualities and capacity to help, and Council can make a statement about its support for the great caring work of the ANC. I appeal to my colleagues to show compassion and leadership and support this motion in its entirety. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Tiley, there is one error in your comment about the Semirez. That's a capital grant.
Still cash out of Council's budget.
It's still a capital. It's a different.
It's not different. We allocated $700,000 out of our budget.
So, my amendment, which is a community, take the funds out of the community service budget. I'll speak to that.
Objection, Mr Mayor. I think that the proper order would be that as the seconder I would speak next.
No, it's amendment, Councillor O'Connor.
Oh, I'm speaking to Councillor Tiley's motion, which
Yes, he introduced the motion.
Mhm.
Now we're debating. Now I've introduced a amendment, and we're debating the amendment.
My point of order rests. I think Councillor Tiley's spoken to his motion, and the next speaker would be me.
Councillor Tiley introduced the motion.
We now call for a speaker in support of the amendment.
So I have Councillor Grace in support of the amendment. We've got to look at our financial statement that you've all got. And it's important that we take steps to try and improve the financial position fairly and responsibly. Our budget is a finite resource and there's no bucket of uncommitted money. Now, there are alternative options for funding this motion. One is to eliminate the donations and contributions budget, which supports youth programs and initiatives. We could reduce the materials and consumables budget for youth and family services to outlying communities by 50% to the $20,000. We could negotiate the contribution to NERAM to reduce by $20,000 plus CPI per annum. We could reduce the Aboriginal Services budget by $20,000, leaving them $11,000. Or we could reduce the contribution to Aboriginal Cultural and Keeping Place by $20,000, leaving them $20,000. We could reduce the Community Incentives budget by $20,000, leaving the ability to support 10 initiatives only. So these are the alternatives we must consider. The money's got to come from somewhere, so I open it up to debate on where. So, Councillor Gray, do you want to comment? Someone wish to speak against the motion?
The amendment or the motion?
Against? No, the amendment. There's an amendment up there. So
I don't know if this is what I'm doing, but I just wanted to comment on the list of places that you said we could need to take. Are they the only ones? Because you just seem to pick the most needy groups. What about economic development and all those other issues? Because that has a huge impact on economic development when there's people who are homeless, people who have drug addiction problems, people who are at risk of domestic violence. That all has an impact on, you know, whether people work in the community. It also has an impact on other services that needs to be provided. So all of this has an impact on our economic development. So I'm just wondering if this list is just a list of ones that make us sort of feel that they're the ones that we'd be taking from the poorest people. Economic development can be a wide range. Am I speaking to the wrong thing?
Yeah, we are referring to the community services budget area.
Okay,
so if you mentioned the economic development, that's a totally different budget area.
But does it have to only come from community services? Can it come from economic development?
I'm sure if we did that, we'd have people in the economic development very upset because they've got programs arranged.
I'm willing to accept your amendment as part of the motion, so we don't have any conflict. And let's go, let's move from there.
Okay.
So,
can I speak against the motion?
Sorry, against the amendment.
Well, the amendment's now part of
the motion.
The amendment's
no, hang on. If we're going to, I've accepted that this becomes a substantive motion, and therefore we go back to who the speakers are, and it's going to be Councillor Tiley.
I've already spoken to the motion. It's the seconder's turn to speak.
Councillor O'Connor.
Mr Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the public, as well as my fellow councillors, look, I have had lengthy discussions with the Associate Professor Barclay and staff at the ANC. No doubt it's an extremely well-run service. There may have been questions back in times well before 2012 or 2012 when the decrease in funding was introduced by a former council. But I can say in my 6 years as a councillor, I did not hear of this, and I'm assured by Associate Professor Barclay that the major changes in terms of the service delivery and absolutely exemplary financial management through foresights and a qualified accountant doing the books has meant that they're, contrary to an impression that might have been given by the report attached to 12.1, there's absolutely no question about the probity of this organisation, both in terms of its service delivery and in terms of its financial management. And I note that Officer Krista Schmidt, who's the author of that report, admitted and agreed that she agreed with all the propositions put by Associate Professor Barclay. So my question is, we've got an emergency situation. I just want to show you this. This is a form that is one of the projects that the ANC undertakes. It's the EPA program, and it provides money for those families that cannot feed their children, warm them, or wash their clothes if they don't get exemptions or funding for their electricity bills, which they can't pay. Look, energy prices are deposing prime ministers. We've got that problem right here, and this community group that's got a fabulous degree of support in the community and with the Aboriginal community has come to us and just asked us for some emergency help to fill the gap so that they can, as Dr. Tiley's, Councillor Tiley's motion suggests, till they can find different sources of funding. I think we're absolutely obliged to look after the poorest of the poor, and those are the people that come through the doors of the Armidale Neighbourhood Centre. So, look, the question of the widening gap between rich and poor, the unaffordability of energy, this group puts through $300,000 worth of subsidies, but to do this they have to have staff that fill out these forms, talk with clients. For this, the state government gives them absolutely no operational funding. Now, I'm not surprised that FACS and Council are all sort of juggling the ball. We don't want to cough up more, but the fact is the staff there are working overtime, unpaid, as we speak, to keep the doors open, to make sure that the very poorest of the poor in our community can actually keep their children with them, not have notifications for neglect, which would come if they couldn't feed their kids or wash them or with warm water. All the things that we depend on for when we have a problem with paying our electricity bills. So look, I do support this. I think there's a lot of room, and I know for a fact that there is a great willingness on the part of the community, the Armidale Neighbourhood Centre, to go for the hub proposal. This was actually their initial suggestion, and there's been no opposition to that in this room or from the ANC. That's where they want to go. But secondly, they're in a crisis now, and I really think that it's behoven. It's critical for us as a council to demonstrate, not just to our very poor, but to our whole community, that in a major budget, as Dr. Tiley said, Councillor Tiley said, of $93 million, that we've got 20,000 now to keep the doors open for now. The point I want to make is that there's a possibility through the upcoming drought funding, which we understand will be 1 or 1.5 million. The criteria that I've looked at so far indicate that a one-off grant from that fund would probably be compliant with the guidelines. I've been informed by the CEO that she's as yet unaware of what those final guidelines are, so it's not possible to put that as a motion, but I would certainly support us using that money to go towards helping out the ANC, and the guidelines that have already been released certainly include the funding of community organisations that are under stress. I know the ANC is presently working with people who are affected by the drought. Their incomes are affected, and the first thing you can't pay when your income is affected is your wretched electricity bills, which are enormous, and this is what they do day in, day out, as well as all the other services that have been mentioned. So I think it's a very small ask, really, and the concern that we may have in relation to...
Councillor O'Connor, your time's up.
Well, I didn't get a warning?
No warnings for councillors.
I would like... and say...
Now,
can deal with it.
someone wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Robinson. Councillor O'Connor, you turn your mic off, please.
Yeah, well, I support a lot of what Councillor O'Connor has said. We shouldn't really let this important community service go under. And this was that would happen if we didn't support the motion, especially in the times of drought and hardship. And I can certainly sympathise with the Armadale staff if they've been rushed off the feet, as they appear to have been, looking at urgent cases in Armadale, which is 10 times the size of the Guyra hub. And the difficulties that this means for bringing in funding and getting in funding applications and getting all the boxes ticked to get this right. So I think it's great that Council is going to support the Armadale Centre to develop a sustainable business model to replicate Guyra's success. And the main thing, therefore, is, as Councillor Tiley and Councillor O'Connor have suggested, to keep things ticking over in the meantime. And I would also support Councillor O'Connor's idea that it's possibly true that if once the guidelines have been published, we might be able to get drought funding money for this important community service, given the fact that the neighbourhood centre is doing a lot to assist families affected by hardship, including those affected by drought. And if this is the case, then maybe this is a better source of funds for the neighbourhood centre. So I hope that if that comes about, we can really reinvestigate where the money is going to come from. And all the time, what we want to do is really get the neighbourhood centre on its feet and keep this important, vital community service going until we can find a sustainable source of funding.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Just to clarify, I have a contact that works for the Minister and there's still no guidelines, so let's leave the guidelines alone at the moment. Speaker against the motion, please. Councillor Bailey. Councillor,
yeah, mate.
You wish to speak against?
I'll call it against, but we'll see how we go. Might be just a question. Now, I know Councillor Tiley, as the mover, will have right of reply, so there's probably some more questions for him to answer in his right of reply, would be the way to put it. And having listened to Councillor Tiley move the motion and then listen to the Mayor's amendment, I have a few questions. I think where would as you mentioned in your amendment, where would the funds come from? I think Councillor Tiley mentioning 93 million being a lot of money, 20,000 being pittance, but when broken up, 20,000 into the community services, actually, when you look at it, there's not a lot of movement in regards to the money. So I've written here, it was well worded in rhetoric of fear and emotive language, but we've got to look at real world solutions and actually break all of those things down. So my question in regards to your point and to Councillor Tiley is, are we looking at a situation here where we're taking from Arthur to give to Martha within the community services budget? I believe, having used the neighbourhood centre in my younger days, I understand the importance of the business and the service, but is the most important point the actual service that the neighbourhood centre gives, or the actual neighbourhood centre itself? So whether the service, that's why I asked the question earlier, whether the services would be lost or whether the neighbourhood centre would be lost, or whether it would be moved and all that sort of thing. So what, I suppose this is for Councillor Tiley, what would be you talked earlier about a better solution or something along those lines, what would be the better solution so that we can keep the services going, so that those services aren't being lost, but also under the budget constraints that we have in regards to the community services? So I'm hoping for a response out of that in your reply, but otherwise that's it. Thanks.
Since I don't have a right to reply, I'll answer very quickly your question. That will have to come out of that community services, and the CEO will have to endeavour to pluck it out of some areas. So, someone wishes to speak for the motion? No, he spoke sort of against-ish, so I'd take him as against. Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, I wasn't quite sure whether Councillor Robinson, when she spoke about the drought money, is that they do actually handle drought relief. So that is part of what they do, but they're not given money to administer that. I know that you said that we haven't had the regulations, but I've just seen the guidelines that were just put on the government primary industries page only 3 weeks ago. But anyway, if it's not changed, or if it is changed, if it's about whether it is or it isn't, the fact that they are actually giving out drought money and not giving any administrative overheads to do that, they're just doing it themselves, would mean that I would say they would merit some support there. On top of all the other things we've heard about the heroic work they do, people should know that they are actually working for practically nothing, and that any insinuation that they're following a bad business model should be questioned. If they want to change the business model, the first thing you would do, actually, in order for their business model to be changed, would be for them to have money, some money. You can't have a business model without any money. Other people, when Krista talked about if they do run out of funds and somebody else takes over, why somebody else take over? There's already an organisation there that's trusted, who's been in the community for a long time and doing a fantastic job. I think it would be tragic to let them go. I don't think it's like, oh yes, we can replace them. I think they're more valuable than that. Thank you.
A speaker against, Councillor Bailey.
Firstly, I think what we should do is get rid of budgets and we'll just take everything out of one pot. We won't bother having an economic development budget. We won't bother having an engineering budget. We'll just dip into it when we come up with a new idea about how we should spend our money. We have budgets for a reason because it allows committees and it allows managers and sections to plan a 12-month program of what they're trying to do. If they know that every 10 minutes or every 2 months the council to come along and take money out, they might have allocated, they might have agreed to the work, and all of a sudden we don't have that money. So I think we're going to be very careful when we start dipping into a budget of money to prop up an area that wasn't even in the budget. My concern is that we are proposing to spend money that has not been in the budget, wasn't in the budget last year, and we're now into a situation where my understanding is we are going to have some financial and budgeting workshops in October, and I think it would be wise to wait until we see what they show before we suddenly start going in and taking money away from some other area. I'm very worried that we are in a situation where we're trying to patch something up. The other questions I have is why are other neighbourhood centres able to perform and work? Why does Guyra work? Why do other neighbourhood centres in Moree work? Why are we in this situation where this neighbourhood centre can't be sustainable? They're questions I think of concern to me. So I can't support the motion.
Speaker for? Sorry, Councillor Bryant, you've already spoken. Councillor Gadley, you will speak for the motion.
Look, this has been one of the hardest. This is the hardest decision I've had to make since I've been on council, and I've thought about it endlessly, and I've talked to a few people about it. A few of the things that came up, I can see they got a bit of credence here. My personal view that I've came to, which is a bit of a fine line, is that I don't think we can pull the carpet out from under them. I think we've got to give them a bit of a chance to continue on. I think the hub idea of them joining with other services similar to them is a great thing, and I think that's something we can work to in the next 12 months. I think they've got to be able to keep going. As far as the drought money goes, I think that is just it's not in the race, I'm afraid to say. I don't put the drought in anything to do with this. I think maybe the community services budget, maybe if we do knock 20% off here and 10% off there off a couple, we don't hit the one mob that hard. There might be, because there's definitely people that are part of the community that are involved in those same things that are probably using this facility. Look, this has been a hard one for me, but I think there might be ways around. I definitely agree that we shouldn't be taking it out of other money. But if we can find a way of whittling a little bit off each of the other ones and having a talk to whoever's running them and if they can see the importance of keeping the neighbourhood centre going, I say great. But I am speaking for the motion. But thank you for the time.
A speaker against? Yeah, Councillor Tyler, your right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In December 2016, I summoned the relevant senior council staff and asked them to look at their budgets with a view to finding money for the airport terminal. At that time, in a matter of a few days, they found $2.2 million without too much trouble. It's not all that difficult. It can be done. The $750,000 that is in our current budget for the Somers project is cash. It's part of our budget. Let's not be deluded by what the Mayor says. It's very easy, and councils traditionally find the allocations for these extraneous issues from their quarterly budget reviews, and that would have been the easiest way to do this. But to get support of further councillors, I acceded to the Mayor's amendment. To Councillor Witter's point, I was a little bit confused as to what point you were making, Brad, but reordering of the community service budget is our prerogative as councillors. We set the budget, we can amend it as circumstances dictate. That's probably the best way that I can answer you. And as for Councillor Bailey, virtually saying have a bucket and let's dip in when we want to, budgets can be amended. Responsible corporate entities like this council can accommodate changing circumstances as they arrive. So I discount what he said completely. I am saddened that this matter, the matter of $20,000 or 0.004 of 1% of our annual total budget, had to be dragged through this public spotlight. I feel inclined to apologise to the ANC for this having to happen. It really grieves me. I appeal to each of you to show some compassion and let's look after those in our community that most need us. Thank you.
Councillor Tyler, the $750,000 is unfunded money.
Mr. Mayor, the
so,
debate's concluded.
No, I'm just clarifying your point.
No, you can't do that. You're taking too many levities as our leader.
So I'll put that to the vote, and that's all of those points up there. Those in favour? Those against? 3. Carried. Moving on to 9.1, endorsement of the draft procurement policy. That's a 4-part point recommendation there. So could I have a move and a second, please? Councillor Robinson, Councillor Murad. Councillor Robinson.
Well, assessing the development of competitive local businesses and providing locally based suppliers with the opportunity to participate in the procurement process should result in overall benefits to our region and therefore to Council. So let's put it on public exhibition. Thank you.
Councillor Murad.
Yeah, I think it should go out to public exhibition to let the people see that we're trying to, be open with our procurement and encourage local businesses to apply for work on council. So it's a good move.
Speaker for. Speaker against. I'll put that then. Those. So.
Could I ask a question of the CEO or the purchasing manager?
Yes.
Can we ensure that there is a training program put in place for this so that we can train the business community and people that want to contract with council to learn how to put in tenders, how to apply to do council work? Can we organise to do that in the next 3 months?
I'll put that through to our CEO.
The short answer is yes, and currently we do provide advice and support and assistance to local companies who wish to tender for existing contracts.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item 9.2, the invitation to join regional cities, New South Wales, and it's a 4-point recommendation there. Before we start, I might ask our CEO to provide information on this.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. This was an initiative by Tamworth City Council, which predates my appointment. The Mayor and I attended a workshop in August to pull together what might be the commonality of interests of regional cities. I think it's important for the Council to note that it differs from the joint organisation, which we belong in one particular respect. The joint organisation works to look at local or geographically based interests. The Regional Cities Forum, Cities Association is looking to come and find commonality of interest for regional cities, those cities that have been identified as growth centres in New South Wales, and that also has, I guess, driven the membership. The timing of the membership subscription, I have to say, is not ideal for this council right now, and I would be hoping to be able to pay, if the council endorses the recommendations, the membership fee at a more opportune time for the council than is currently. My advice from the other general managers and CEOs of other councils have indicated that Tamworth City Council has resolved to join it, as has Coffs Harbour City Council and Port Macquarie City Council.
Any questions before we... Yes, Councillor Gray?
Through the CEO, how is this any different from Evo Cities and our membership with Evo Cities?
This one is more policy related, and what it seeks to do in terms of its terms of reference is to be able to develop and research, analyse policy that can influence and have some input into the funding decisions of the state government in relation to regional cities. The state government Treasury Department has already, and Department of Premier and Cabinet has indicated that it is looking for such a forum to provide that input into its future funding and broader regional policy development.
Councillor O'Connor?
Oh, thank you. Well, given the CEO's recent comment just made in relation to the state government's interest in such a body, it does appear we do have a proliferation of different regional organisations, all of which are requiring our Mayor and CEO to fly away and attend. What offers or what prospects through the Mayor, can I ask the CEO, does the CEO see in relation to the state government supporting this body?
The state government, including the Deputy Premier, has already, when it spoke to the Inland Forum, has already indicated it would support such a body. I think it's probably also fair to say that the existence of the Inland Forum is probably in doubt with the formation of the Regional Cities Association if it gains the membership that it anticipates.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just curious. Part of the policy decision making was, for example, how would you be spending the Snowy Hydro proceeds on regional development projects? How does council become involved in that? How do what we feel feed into that? I mean, how does it happen? Do you know?
I would anticipate that if there were, I think the state government will make the decisions around the expenditure of the 4.2 million from the Snowy Hydro sale. What it is seeking from such a body as regional cities is input into those expenditure decisions on particular issues that arise from the growth centres, of which regional cities have been designated. I would anticipate if such input is sought from regional cities, the matters will be brought to council so that the Mayor and I have some direction from council as to how Armidale Regional Council sees those issues.
I thought someone over on my left was... Yeah, Councillor Bailey first.
Do you see also that Evo Cities would be expanded to include other members of a Regional Cities Alliance?
Councillor, I don't know how to answer that because it hasn't been specifically discussed by either the general managers of those regional cities or their mayors.
Councillor Connor.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor, to the CEO, is that an undertaking that Council will actually, this body, be consulted before positions are taken by yourself and the Mayor to this body? Because I note that that's largely absent in relation to these other attendances that you make in relation to Country Mayors Association and other similar statewide bodies which we as a governing body are purported to be represented.
I'm not sure what the practice has been in the past, but I would anticipate that the agendas of such meetings would be distributed to the councils prior to the meeting, seeking input on a routine basis. If there are major policy issues to be determined and to be become a policy decision of regional cities, it would be brought to council either by way of a councillor workshop or formally to council.
Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Robertson. Councillor Gray. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, well, as everything's being discussed, I support this proposal because I think we need a seat at the table to attract the attention of government to ensure that we do get our fair share of funding, and also highlight to a government that attracting population to the regions is a much better outcome than cramming more and more people into Sydney with all the additional infrastructure and environmental costs that that would entail. And we've also seen that the state government's interested in this initiative, so they're going to listen to what we say. And also, given the success of a similar model in Victoria, I think we really should be giving this a try. And I also understand that regional cities might replace the Inland Forum. So, and therefore our membership fees for the Inland Forum could also just be carried over to the regional cities. So we might end up with a better organisation at no additional cost. So for these reasons, I hope that the rest of the council will support it.
Councillor Gray. The Speaker for the motion. Anyone wish to speak against it? Councillor Tiley.
Speaking against Mr Mayor, and I'm quite bemused, but I respect Councillor Robinson's right to say what she just said. I've been around for a little while in local government. We have Local Government New South Wales. We have Country Mayors Association. We have the New England Joint Organisation. We have Evo Cities. We have the Association of Correlated Councils. We have the Inland Forum, and I'm sure I'm missing a few. The membership fees all up for those entities and the others I can't recall offhand is significant. Evo Cities, which I was involved in the establishment of when I was an RDA chair, has been working well. The 7 cities have done a lot of good things together. You may notice on the council's letterhead the Evo Cities logo. It's serving us well. I've witnessed these types of organisations spring up over the last half century. Many of them no longer exist. They fizzle out. There's no compelling reason, in my view, right now, why we have to commit to joining this organisation. Why don't we, as an alternative, let our JO, our brand newly legislated JO, settle in and make that work for us to the best advantage that we can. The government of the day legislated these with the intent that they be used in 12 state locations across the state. Let's make use of that vehicle. I believe we ought to adopt a wait-and-see approach to this because there's no clear merits to join yet another organisation at some cost when we need to recognise that we've got a new JO that can work for us very well. So I'm against the motion.
Speaker 4.
I'll now speak in favour, if I may, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
ma'am.
I understand the scepticism of Councillor Tiley to another organisation, but I would argue two things. Firstly, that there is a commonality about this, they are regional cities. And one of the problems I think that both country mayors and JOs will have is you are dealing with a wide church. You're dealing with communities from 3,000 people and in some cases up to 90,000 people. There's not a lot of commonality of interest there, whereas regional cities have a lot of common issues that they have to deal with. And that's why I think Regional Inland Forum has worked, and I've always been advocating that the Inland Forum should be expanded. But I never believed that Evo City should have excluded the coastal regional cities, because it's by weight of numbers that you can build a market profile, and you get a bigger marketing budget, you get all sorts of things happening. By us being able to go to state government, or the Mayor being able to go to state government and lobby on particular issues associated with regional cities, and with a population I would guesstimate at probably 750,000 people, you'll have some real muscle. Whereas I think one of the problems has been that country mayors, and I have addressed country mayors in my former role, where they bring a minister in to talk about what he's doing in the roads department or whatever, and then you invariably will get down to councils and small councils asking bitchy questions about what are you going to do about the potholes on the Berrigan Road, 10 kilometres from Berrigan. And that's where I think you've got to try and raise it to another level, and by having a regional cities alliance, I think it would raise it to another level.
Speaker against?
Again, I don't know whether it's against or for, but I'll put it in the against. Just listening to both Councillor Bailey and Councillor Tiley, how many of the other councils, and this might be answered by the CEO, how many of the other councils on this one are also included in the other organisations that Councillor Tiley mentioned, and are we just having meetings with the same councils, and for the sake of having meetings with the same councils if we're already on 10 different groups with them as it is?
I might answer that. The country mayors, basically most of these will be on the same group, country mayors, but as Councillor Bailey had, there's a lot of light discussion in the Country Mayors Association. We're talking about the Inland Forum, that I think is going to subside into this group here. Does that answer your question? Speaker 4. Councillor Colletley.
Well, I might do a Bradley and ask the other side of it here, I don't know whether it's a for or against, but in the same thing, here we are, we're looking at a $5,000 fee to join that, and whether this has got anything to do with it, we were on about the $20,000. Where does this sort of money come from to pay for joining of these associations or whatever they are? Thank you.
I'll ask the CEO to answer.
There is a budget for our subscriptions and our membership to various organisations. This is a new one, and I was kind of hoping that you wouldn't ask how I might pay for that, because it will be a case of deferring payment to a more opportune time.
So, any speakers against? Okay, Councillor Robertson, you're right to reply.
Oh, the only thing I'd like to say is that this idea seemed to come from the Inland Forum, and as our CEO has suggested, it looks as if the Inland Forum will morph into the regional cities, and if it does so, we'll end up with a better and more powerful organisation for no additional cost. And that's one of the main reasons for wanting to support it, because the inland cities do have a lot in common, like attracting population from overcrowded Sydney, and it's something that I hope will happen. And I also hope that we'll also be able to have some of the meetings using our excellent NBN technology instead of actually travelling all the time.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Okay, put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Do you get the numbers? Item 9.3, which is a review of organisational structure, and the recommendation is that the Council endorse the organisation structure incorporates 2 senior staff positions within the organisation. Before I put that, I'd ask the CEO to provide comment, please.
Yeah. Sorry. Councillors, this is in another forum, it's probably called a machinery of government recommendation and report. The legislation requires the council to put in place a senior staff structure 12 months after its election and appointment. It is now 12 months since this council was established and elected, and therefore the senior staff structure of 3, as Councillor Tiley points out, is being put to you for adoption. The legislation is reasonably clear that the council establishes the senior staff structure. That's and in this case, what's been recommended and was in place previously was the CEO and 2 direct reports. There's no change proposed for that, and the legislation requires the council to consult with the CEO to establish that structure. As there's been no change, there wasn't felt to be the need for that discussion. And although there have been some minor changes around the titles of the 2 roles, there's no change in the reporting relationships. The titles are matters that are for the Chief Executive Officer, as are the functions below that, where there have been some minor changes around reallocation of functions. Let me be really clear about this, and because I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. There is no change to the organisational structure as far as the senior staff are concerned. There is a process underway by way of the service level reviews and the review of the work that needs to be done and how it's going to be done, which is being led, hence one of the changes in functions of one of the senior staff, which may result in the need for me to consult with the council around organisational changes. It's not immediate. It's a process of review and a process of rethinking and redesigning, and certainly at this stage it's not foreshadowed in any changes to the senior staff. It's really important, we think, for there to be any changes, that it goes through a process of bottom-up examination of the work that needs to be done, how it's going to be done, because clearly, as we all know, the tagline, your form follows function. We're still doing the work of identifying and reviewing function. I don't think there's much more I need to say about that.
Any questions? Councillor O'Connor?
Oh, look, I'd just like to propose a small and I don't think particularly significant amendment to the motion, which would be to have paragraph 1 as is, and paragraph 2 that this matter be referred to a workshop in the future, as soon as possible, My concern is, whilst I accept and ardently wish to support the CEO in the difficult job that she has, it's not the... Oh, sorry, can I speak to the amendment? Yep.
Okay, hang on, we haven't even put it to the... This is a question period yet, please. So if you
Well,
could...
this is a proposal for an amendment
let's just wait then.
to the motion.
Let's...
We have 3 senior staff positions under the state public service level. Why isn't it 2?
Yeah, it's been fixed.
The wording is endorse the structure which incorporates 2 senior staff positions. We've got a CEO and 2 directors.
It's up there, Anne. It's up there. It's up there, 3.
Councillor Connor, you turn your mic off, please. And Councillor Tiley. I'd like to ask Peter Wilson to provide comment on this.
Through the CEO, the clarification is we have a statutory position being a general manager CEO, and we have 2 senior staff. That is our structure.
So does that mean that this recommendation here only affects the 2 underneath the CEO, and that's why the CEO's position wasn't originally in the what was written at the moment?
Do you want to comment on that?
You don't answer, yeah.
In accordance with the Act, if staff structure is proposed to be changed, which in this case it's not, then there would be a change to the structure. We have 1 general manager / CEO, and we have 2 appointed senior staff, which not in the context of what's in the Act.
Can I make a suggestion, please, around that? Can we include which incorporate and 2 senior staff, please?
Any other questions before we... This is still question period? Okay, then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Gray, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Gray.
Mr Mayor?
We hadn't even put this up when you were talking about it, Councillor O'Connor.
I beg your pardon? So, oh, thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Witters. Councillor O'Connor, you turn your mic off, please. Councillor O'Connor, you turn your mic off, please. Councillor Gray.
Firstly, I think it's a structure that is welcomed in regard that there has been a lot of change thus far, and we do not have any significant changes in this structure. So thank you for that. I take on board that because of the minimal disruption in this structure, and it's only by name, so it's by nature it's not a disruption. It would be, I support this motion. Just as a comment, and it doesn't need to be an amendment or anything like that, I think it would be wonderful to have in a workshop or at some point to hear the CEO's future of the structure as you find out more information and how you see this structure working for the community.
Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I agree. And also, if the mover is happy, then I would also support Councillor O'Connor's amendment.
Mrs. CEO.
No, I don't think so. Can I speak to my amendment?
Are you wishing to put an amendment? Well,
Yes, and I can see it up there under yellow highlighter.
So you wish amendment?
Mm-hmm.
Which is that?
Correct.
Can I have a seconder for your amendment?
I think.
Councillor Robertson, you've already voted. Sorry, you. Councillor O'Brien. So, Councillor O'Connor.
Right. Well, the reason I proposed this is that, as I've said in the introductory section of this debate or discussion, I really want to support the CEO, but as I look at the section, it does require consultation with councillors. And whilst I note that there's the idea that the CEO and Mr Wilson have put that there's been no change, the Act's very clear that any new council should be consulted. And we are a new council. We've come out of a most unusual circumstance of an historic merger. And I don't think it's really true to say that as a new council, nothing's changed. Everything's changed. We are a new council. This is a completely new management structure that's been introduced during the historic merger period, or phase 1 of the merger period. We're now in phase 2, which is the restoration of democracy. And I really do think that in those circumstances, it shouldn't be a problem for all of the governing body to have a workshop with the new CEO. I note that we've had 5 CEOs in the last 10 months or so of this council, so it hasn't really been an easy time for us as a governing body. There's no criticism inferred or meant to be implied in that, but it has been difficult for us as councillors, and I think it would be a good thing for us to see this as an opportunity to discuss what the CEO has in mind overall, rather than be presented with a report. And the other point I have is that the report here is actually authored by Ms Heaton, who is, in terms of the hierarchy, a subordinate to all of the people that this is, to the senior management that's referred to in this motion. So I just would really love for us all to have the opportunity to talk this through, as I think the Act anticipates, with the CEO in relation to the overall picture of the management structure. Now, I know there are statutory limits to what we can approve and what we can't, but the legislation is clear. It says that a council must, after consulting the general manager, determine the following. So I just don't see that there's any problem, and it would be a huge advantage to us all to have that workshop with the CEO so that we can learn more about the change. And it's not as if there is no change. There is quite a substantial change proposed in this in terms of the reallocation of portfolios, if you like, between the 2 current group leaders. And there's renaming, and a number of implications flow from this. And I'm asking respectfully that we be allowed to have a workshop so that we can comply with the very clear stipulations of the Act.
Councillor O'Connor, your microphone, please. And just want to get some clarification from the CEO on a couple of matters you raised.
Thank you. Can I just clarify, please? More than happy to hold a workshop once with the council, because clearly I need to consult with the council about the rest of the management or the rest of the organisational structure other than the senior staff. Doing it as soon as possible, I would suggest, would be very premature, because as I say, the work still needs to be done in terms of reviewing services, understanding what we provide, understanding what we need to provide, understanding how we're going to provide it. And I see that as a fairly intense and probably extensive piece of work. So as soon as possible, which anticipating that the council wishes that to happen in the next few weeks, will probably not be terribly illuminating around the rest of the organisational structure. But more than happy to schedule a workshop once that work has been done and we have firmer views on what the organisational structure may look like. To be honest, I didn't realise it would occasion such comment. The Act actually says that the council needs to put in place a senior staff structure and consult with the chief executive or general manager in doing so. So it's for the council to consult with me in terms of putting in the structure. On that basis, the view was, as there's no change to the existing structure that was here when I was appointed, that there would be, that your need to consult with me probably was not necessary.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien. Anyone wish to speak for the amendment? Speak against? Councillor Gray.
The amendment, while in itself, as CEO explained, to have a workshop and share the practicalities of the organisational structure and how that's going to work, I totally agree with. The time frame of as soon as possible is probably not logistically doable. So I'm just thinking and going to suggest that by the end of the quarter, the next quarter, which would be by the end of December, would give some ample time for us to at least have some level of conversation as to the progress of how this structure is working for the whole of the organisation and also the community.
To accept that amendment?
Anyone wish to speak?
To the amendment?
Anyone wish to speak for the motion? Okay, I'll put it to...
I don't think that B is right, because you're really going to have to say the council holds a workshop on future, something like future organisational structure. We've got to really pass the first part, and the second part has got to be the council holds a workshop by the end of December on a future organisational structure. You can't do it the other way around. You can't hold the whole thing up to wait for a workshop.
Can I just clarify what my meaning was around that amendment to the amendment, if that's okay?
Councillor Gray, you actually do have a right of reply.
Well, it was just around the amendment, though.
No, I'm just saying you have a right of reply for
Yeah. So just in that on the organisational structure as per A, not necessarily that it's a future one. It's that the workshop is on a progress of how the organisational structure as per A would be progressing.
Well, with great respect, I'm happy with Councillor with both these amendments. I just want to have that conversation for the reasons that I set out before.
So, Councillor Gray, was that your right of reply for the amendment? Okay, I'll put that to the vote. Councillor O'Connor, you turn your mic off, please. I'll put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour of the amendment? Those against? Carried. So, the amendment, that becomes the substantive motion. So I'll put those in favour of that, the whole motion. Those against? Carried. Item 9.4, which is endorsement of the draft rates and charges write-off policy. There's 4 parts to that. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, Councillor?
I just wanted to ask a question when I can.
Oh, sorry.
Can I ask one now?
Yeah, before we do, yes.
Yes, okay. Just the range of options for the write-offs that were included in the attachment, I noticed are not inclusive of a range of write-offs that are under the Act and included in other councils under hardship policies, and there's a range of those that I've noticed on a few other, not only in the Act and a few other councils, and that includes things such as write-off of accrued interest on rates, these glasses are wrong, rates on charges payable by a person if a person's unable to pay because of hardship, or waive or reduce rates, charges and accrued interest due to persons who have been prescribed under the Social Security Act, and that the council can use its discretion to write off rates and interest accrued for pensioners. And a ratepayer who incurs a rate increase in the first year following a re-evaluation of land can apply for rate relief if the amount of rates could cause substantial hardship, and a number of other options or extra inclusions under the Act that could be included, and I'm just wondering if I could get clarification why other councils have this included and we not considering it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Through you, CEO.
Certainly. We can take that on notice. Yeah.
Okay, mover in a second. Councillor Murat, Councillor Tiley. Councillor Murat. Councillor Tiley. Any? Nope. Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Councillor Connor, you and Councillor O'Brien against? Yes.
Can that be recorded, please?
Item 11.1, which is land acquisition and disposal to facilitate platform road realignment. Two parts there. Can I move it? Councillor Murat, Councillor Tiley, Councillor Murat. Tiley, Councillor Tiley. Okay, anyone wish to comment to speak against? I'll put that. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Ooh. Sorry, I skipped over 9.5, which is the supplementary agenda. My apologies, councillors. Now, before I put this item for debate, I wish to highlight some significant issues. This is a financial report for the end of the financial year 2017-18 and is ready for auditing. The current financial position of council is not good. The result is a $2.6 million deficit. If you consider the advice in item 13.1, the projected outlook is a deficit of $3.8 million by the end of June 2019, if we were to continue as we presently are. This we cannot do. There are a number of reasons for our current position, but as Mayor of Armidale Regional Council, I take full responsibility for the current position. I do not wish to, nor believe it to be productive to blame anyone for our current position. We have to move forward. I have had discussions with our CEO, and she is working with senior leadership team to look at ways to reduce this deficit. I appreciate the valued contribution of all our staff in making efforts to reduce this deficit, but I will warn you there will be significant cuts across the board. Further information on where and how we reduce this deficit will be worked through during a workshop next month. So with that, I will, the 9.5, which is 3 parts, I'll put that to a mover in a second. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Murat. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, well, as one of the signatories to this document, I did spend a fair bit of time last night looking through it. And one thing that came out to me, despite all the gloom and doom about deficits, effectively the value of council's assets has increased over the year by 17.6 million, from 861 to 879 million. So what to my mind was less pleasing about this was having to look through a 109-page non-searchable document where you can't cut and paste any information into other documents, to look at it carefully and examine it as really I felt I should have done as part of my due diligence. Or even, for example, search for items like the water fund or the sewer fund. And transparency and accountability are important aspects of democracy. So I hope that this report can actually be reissued in a form where it can be searched and can be cut and pasted in the future, so that it is in a user-friendly format. But otherwise, yes, I mean, there are difficulties, but on the other hand, we have got some successes and our assets have increased, and that is at least an optimistic point. And I'm happy to support the motion.
Councillor Murat.
Yeah, I'll support the motion, but I totally agree with the comments made by you, Mr Mayor, that we need to take a serious look at our financial situation. It's not all doom and gloom, but we can't just let things keep on going on the way it is with increasing deficits every year. We've got to address it, and it's our responsibility as well as your responsibility, and thank you for taking the responsibility, but it's not just yours alone, it's all councillors here. And we've got to take a serious look at it, and I'm quite happy to work through it with the CEO and the senior staff to try and reduce that deficit.
Thank you, Councillor Matt. Speaker for the motion, yes. Councillor Tiley.
We all support what is a snapshot in time going to our auditors for audit. That's beyond that. I agree with what Councillor Moratz just said. We mustn't lose sight, and I said this in the earlier debate today, that we had a surplus on operations to 30th of June 17 of $16.277 million, in large part merger money from my friend Mike Baird. But it's not all doom and gloom. We do have quarterly budget reviews. It's incumbent upon us to convey to our staff that they need to come back with us and give us a methodology by which we can come back to at least a zero situation at 30th of June 2019. That ought to be occurring with the first quarterly budget review that we receive. I think it's also important to note that in the period ending 30th of June 17, our total grants and contributions was $31.5 million, down to $13.5 million in the year just ended. Nevertheless, we've only had a $2.6 million deficit in a total budget of 93 or thereabouts million. Councillor Morat's spot on. It's not doom and gloom, but we do, as you say, have to be responsible. We do have to cut our cloth to suit our situation, and I'll fully support a robust discussion about how we do that in a quarterly budget review process.
Speaker for? Oh, sorry. Speaker against? Councillor Bailey? No speaker against? Okay, I'll put that to then. Therefore,
can I speak for? I know it's indulgent, but I think it's...
Yeah, okay, I'll indulge it.
Be quick. Thank you. I have four concerns. Firstly, that employee benefits went up from nearly $20 million to nearly $24 million. There's obviously been a huge blowout in the wages somewhere. I notice in future budgets that's going to be corrected. That is a real worry. We also note that other expenses have climbed by $1.2 million. We also note that although our revenue went up by $10 million, our expenses have climbed more than they should have. And I think we've seriously got to look at some methods to ensure that we can bring it back into a break-even point. And I have every faith in the council management team that they can do that and that we can have an appropriate input to ensure that we get back into a strong financial position.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. I'll put that the motion then to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I skipped it. Yes, Paul. 11.2, which is the airport fees and charges. There's a two-part item there. Before we do go, are there any questions before we put it to no one? Okay. I'll move in a second, please. Councillor Gray, Councillor Martin, Councillor Gray.
I would like to congratulate the CEO, senior staff and the members of the organisations or the businesses at the airport for coming together, working through this and having something on the table that is workable for all parties. So congratulations.
Councillor Martin. Speaker for? Any speaker against? Okay, put it to...
Excuse me.
Councillor O'Connor.
I just would like my comment to be recorded in the minutes that councillors were requested to not have any conversations with the general aviation people the subject of this negotiation.
Councillor O'Connor, that is not what we're debating here. So
Well,
So,
I just want it to be on the record, that's all.
I'll put this, Councillor Tiley.
I guess I'm speaking to the motion, if I may. I've had more people out at my workplace give it to me about this than anything else, and they don't know the facts. They don't know the smallness of this in an overall sense, and I just appeal to the CEO to make sure we get a good message out when this is adopted, so that it puts the naysayers to one side. We don't need that sort of bad publicity when they got the facts wrong. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We move on to 12.2, which is the fee waiver for the Guyra Community Hall. As recommended, can I have a move and a second, please? Councillor Gilletley, Councillor Martin. Councillor Gilletley?
No, nothing to say, thank you.
Councillor Martin?
I was just going to say, I think considering the huge impact that the drought is having on our whole region, this is a great way of us supporting others that are trying to help that cause.
Anyone else wish to speak for? Okay, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Carried. Item 13.1. These are item 13.1 to 13.3 are all information. I'd like to treat them in globo. Can I have a move in a second? Councillor Morat, Councillor Martin. I'll just put that to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 16.1. Oh, sorry, item 14. There's no request for leave. No. So it's committee reports. Item 16.1. With the item 16.1, I'll take it in 3 stages, please. So I'll need a mover and a second for A and B, and within B, I'll need a mover and a second for the 2 parts. So part A, a mover and a second, please. Councillor Robinson, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Robinson?
I'll leave comments till the end.
Councillor O'Connor?
Nothing to add.
Anyone wish to speak for the motion or against? Okay, this is just that the minutes be noted, so I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item 16.1, Part B. Part I, not the first one. This is that council resolved that we have 2 councillors appointed. Councillor Connor, you turn your mic off, please. We have 2 councillors already appointed to the Environmental Sustainability Committee, and to appoint a further councillor, we will need to change our terms of reference. So could I have a mover and a seconder for that part, please? Councillor Robinson, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Robinson?
Well, this came about because membership of the committee was discussed at the previous meeting when we accepted new membership applications for Guyra and Ebor. And the committee is now going strong, and it's clear that we have virtually a huge huge workload on this committee. There's just so many things that we have to consider during this term of council, including energy efficiency, climate change adaptation and mitigation, promoting local wind, solar and energy storage initiatives, including batteries and pumped hydro. There's a proposal at Leven Mountains, for example. We're also interested in peer-to-peer energy trading, sustainable transport, waste management and minimisation, local foods, biodiversity, and conserving native flora and fauna, as well as noxious seeds, feral animals, air and water pollution. And now, when deciding the number of councillors on this committee, we had to guess the workload. And what happened was the council appointed 3 councillors in total to committees with heavy workloads, such as the Community Wellbeing Committee, the Regional Growth Committee, and the Audit and Risk and Improvement Committee. And in view of the workload of the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee, the committee members themselves decided to think it would be helpful to appoint a 3rd councillor who had interest and experience in this area. And I think we should support the committee in that recommendation. Because after all, the committee is the one who is doing the work, and if we support them, then we'll get much better and more out of them in the long run.
Councillor O'Brien.
They've got a big workload, and they've got somebody with the background, enthusiasm, interest and experience to help out. I really simply can't see a problem. There's somebody wanting to do good work. There's a committee who wants that good work done. I mean, I really, for the life of me, can't imagine why there'd be an issue or a problem with this. So absolutely support it. What are you frowning at?
Just wish to clarify, this is going to be a person appointed, if it does go through, by councillor. It could be anyone of the councillors.
Yeah, but we know, we can read ahead.
It'll be up to council to decide.
All right. Okay, I'll pretend I haven't seen it. All right.
Speaker for? A speaker against?
Yep.
Councillor Widders?
How do I put it? Environmental Sustainable Committee probably should look for more community members to take the workload down instead of an extra council member. 2 council members on that committee, on any committee, I believe is reasonably enough, on the fact that then they can bring what they hear and what the committee is doing back to the council, which I think is their role within a committee to report that. And I'm a bit concerned about procedural issues that whatever committee it is, whether it's this committee or whether it's the sports committee or whether it's any other committee, they go, we don't like the councillors we want another one. We move that, we have another one. Then it creates a Pandora's box on allowing committees to do that. So although I agree that their nominated councillor is very passionate in regards to this issue, I believe that procedural issues and the fact that it then would create other issues for other committees against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Widders. Anyone wish to speak for the motion? Okay, Councillor Robinson, your right to reply.
Well, I think the committee was of this opinion because they thought that there were special functions of councillors, and also, in fact, that one of the councillors of this committee has not been able to attend for the past couple of meetings. So I think that the committee in general thought that it would be a good move and it would be helpful to progress the work of this committee. And also remember that when we did this discussion, as I've said, we already have 3 councillors on 3 other committees, the ones which we thought had the heavy workload. And so I don't really think it's asking too much that just because this case it came from the committee rather than anybody else. And if I don't really see why it would necessarily set a precedent for other committees unless all the other committees were in favour of that as well. And I cannot see why that would necessarily be the case.
Okay, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour that appoint a further councillor to the committee. Those against? The motion is lost. So in that case, the next part is not called for. Moving on to item 16.2, audit and risk. Can I have a move and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Gray, Councillor Gray, Councillor Morat. Okay, Councillor Tiley.
Could I ask a question, please, on Part E? What was the reason for the exclusion of David Tenner, given that he runs governance in an organisation 4 times the size of this entity?
Could one of the members of that committee respond?
From my recollection, because I don't have my notes with me right now from that meeting, the committee had decided, and please, I think Councillor O'Connor, you were at that meeting as well, that it was decided that it was at this point in time that the committee felt that there was not that need for the extra resource, that there was enough community input within the committee, and that they would certainly look at it further down the track.
I can add to that if you like. There is an upcoming Office of Local Government revised guidelines due to come out shortly, and that could change the number of people that the office requires to be on that committee. So it was decided that rather than disturb the committee, which has taken some time, to get to know each other and work, that what they would do is wait until those guidelines come out and then reconsider Mr. Tanner's application.
Mr. Tanner was interviewed by the previous CEO, and it was all agreed that this would happen. So I'm just trying to fill in the blanks.
That's all I know, because that's all that was discussed at the meeting.
Okay, I'll put that that motion to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item 16.3, which is the minutes of the Armidale Regional Youth Advisory Committee. Two parts. Can I have a mover and a second, please? Councillor Widders, Councillor Morat. Councillor Widders.
Not a lot, just to say that they're a great bunch of people and they run a really good youth awards the other day.
Councillor Morat. Yep. Since there's no opposition, so I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item 16.4, which is the minutes of the Arts and Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee. And there's a number of recommendations there. Can I move it, please?
I'll move that. I'm chair of that committee.
Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Gray. Councillor O'Connor?
Oh, there's nothing I really wish to say except the committee's going well, and we're actually looking at a number of pilot festivals next year. So we're just wanting to move along with implementing the public arts policy, and it's a very, very exciting time for this committee at the moment. We're looking down the track at there being more local art being made part of the streetscape in Guyra, with the Main Street upgrade, and in fact the delays in relation to that actually assist us in sort of scoping more public artwork. There's some in the pipeline at the moment, but we're pretty excited about that. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you.
Councillor Gray. Anyone? Councillor O'Connor, you turn your mic off, please.
Oh, sorry.
Anyone to speak to for? Against? Okay, I'll put that. Those in favour? That's again, good, carried. One last decision before we finish this agenda. 16.5, which is the Traffic Advisory Committee. So can I have a mover? Councillor Martin, Councillor Widders. Councillor Martin? Councillor Widders.
I'd just like to commend the committee for having a look at the lights up at the North Hill.
Could I ask two questions?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in item C, there's a reference to the event on the 29th of September. Is that, can somebody from the committee tell me what that event is? Am I being, no, I won't ask that question. The Trout Festival. Oh, right. Okay, thank you. And the other question is, just in relation to those, the intersection referred to in item H, what is the problem there? I use those traffic lights multiple times every day. Yes. Well, I'm curious.
Councillor Martin.
The issue was actually the line marking on the road, apparently.
Councillor Martin, can you pull your mic down, please?
Oh, sorry. It was actual line marking on the road, because if you're turning left Because there is an arrow there, you actually have to turn left. So you're not supposed to go out and around a car. So that was why the original investigation started. And now it needs to go back to how it was. Yes. Well, I don't know whether they're going to do that. That's gone to RMS for further investigation.
Okay, well, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Bailey.
Can I ask a question that goes to the committee, please? Can we please find out why there is a proliferation of double lines everywhere? Driving as much as I do, there is increasing double lines now on the road to Guyra. There's increasing double lines on the roads down to Tamworth, where there are three lanes down near the Croft. You used to be able to park, go down and move into the middle lane to pass and go down. You can't do that anymore. And the amount of passing spaces between here and our neighbouring centres has diminished dramatically, which makes driving very dangerous. So could we ask some questions of the RMS and the police?
Yep, thank you, Councillor Bailey. Okay, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. So,
Can I just have a quick little statement on the committee side of it? It'll take 2 minutes. No?
Item 17, matters of urgent nature. Are there any?
That's my urgent matter.
No, I will decide if it's urgent.
Sorry. It's to do with the floodplains committee.
No, that's not urgent. You can bring it to the next meeting. No. So,
let's deal with it.
All I was going to say is that I'm actually looking forward to actually chairing a floodplains committee meeting, seeing I'm the chair, because it hasn't happened in the last 12 months. That's all. That's my annual report.
So, Councillor,
thank you.
Item 19.
Can I say I've been watching closely to see when it does meet, because I was chair in the last.
Questions on notice? Okay. I will therefore declare this part of the agenda closed. We'll take a couple of minute break before I don't want to drag on. So just if there's people in here that need to vacate. Can I have a mover and a seconder that we... Yes, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Martin. Did you get that?